Welcome back to the Superbike Italia YouTube channel. Today, in an evening version, a bit romantic, from Santa Maria di Taligure, where I have just finished testing the new R300 GS. In a certain sense, it is an enemy number one for us tinkerers, at least in theory. Perhaps that's why BMW invited me to try it today, to find out if those legends that have been told for a long time in memory are still actually legends. They would like the GS to be the historical Endurona of Monaco, capable of being better ridden, going faster than a super naked or a sport bike on a winding road. Let's see if with the revolution brought by the new 1300, these legends can be something more real and concrete, or if they remain mere myths. It is so new, indeed revolutionized compared to the past, that delving into all the technique of the R1300 GS would require a separate video of about half an hour, 40 minutes. Let's briefly go over the most important news, starting from the engine, where the iconic boxer arrangement remains the same, as well as the variable shift cam timing scheme, but for the rest, the 1300cc twin-cylinder is completely new. The larger displacement is accompanied by a more over-square ratio between bore and stroke, to the advantage of high-end thrust, as well as an increase in the diameter of the intake and exhaust valves and the compression ratio, and thus the declared peak values, which are 145 HP at 7,750 RPM and 149 Nm at 6,500, with over 130 available from 3,600 to 7,800 RPM. Furthermore, it should be noted that in order to save weight and space, as well as to lower the center of gravity, the gearbox has been moved under the engine instead of behind it. While on the cylinders, the distribution chains are asymmetrical, with the right cylinder having the chain in front and vice versa, and in this way, for the first time, the boxer of the GSC is almost perfectly symmetrical also. From the point of view of the suspensions, the basic concepts remain, with the telelever at the front and the paralever at the rear with cardan transmission, but both suspensions are now called Evo, to testify the great refinement work that has particularly affected the front, which has been completely redesigned to be more rigid and give more feeling to the rider, especially when driving on asphalt. As an option, of course, semi-active suspensions are still available, which are also of the new generation DSA, that is dynamic suspension adjustment, which even includes a system to vary the stiffness of the spring. Not only the preload, the frame remains a steel box but is now stiffer and, as can be seen immediately from the shots of the bike, is coupled with a rear frame made of die-cast aluminum. To complete the discussion on the chassis, it is natural to mention the brakes with two 310mm discs at the front, with a radial 4-piston caliper and axial pump. It should be noted that in standard riding mode, braking is always integral and managed by ABS Pro. This signifies that even when pressing the rear brake pedal, the front brake is also engaged. In terms of the wheels, standard alloy wheels are provided, but as tradition dictates, spoke wheels are also available as an option for customers to choose from. In this field, however, the novelty is that among the optional extras, they also provide new forged aluminum wheels, which BMW declares specifically designed for off-road use. Certainly, the electronic package is extremely comprehensive, particularly once it is finished with all the choices accessible on the BMW Motorrad configurator. Among the options, now the GS also has the possibility to install front and rear radars that enable adaptive cruise control, frontal collision warning, and blind spot monitoring in the mirrors. All aids are then collected in 4 standard riding modes: Eco, Rain, Road, and Enduro, to which Pro, Dynamic, Dynamic Pro, and Enduro Pro riding modes can then be added. To summarize this technical overview of the R300 GS, Mentioning configurations, packages, and prices is necessary. The starting versions are four: the Smooth GS from 20,050 euros, the Trophy that costs 850 more, as well as the Triple Black, and the Tramontana that starts from 2,800 euros in addition to the base price. These setups can then be completed with the classic endless infinity of options typical of BMW, of which the main ones are collected in four packages: dynamic, innovation, comfort, and touring. Okay, we have seen that technically BMW has not updated its flagship Max Enduro. It has literally redone it from top to bottom, and therefore the suspicion that there is actually a lot of new is more than natural beyond this X-headlight that has divided opinions on social media at an aesthetic level. The reality, however, is that getting on the saddle, the first sensation, as I have experienced in other cases with other BMWs revolutionized over the generations, is a feeling of continuity. That is, the first thing that strikes about the GS 1300, as it was before on the 1250, but even more so than before, is the confidence that can be felt even at low speeds with a beast like this. Okay, it has lost 12 kilos and is more compact, as we have seen, thanks to the new engine and the new rear subframe in aluminum. In short, a completely different arrangement of the elements, but it still makes its own scene, still an imposing presence that has few equals in the world of motorcycles. However, the very low center of gravity and the overall fluidity of the engine mean that as soon as you get on the saddle, you can immediately master it. And one thing that helps in this, for those who are not exactly long-legged like myself, is an option available for the suspensions that allows you to lower the height with a button, and therefore in traffic, in maneuvers with your feet on the ground, give you a little more comfort in resting your feet, avoiding finding yourself in those embarrassing situations where you have 200, almost 40 kilo to manage and you are leaning on the ground for a particle of the sole of your shoes. But beyond these fairly mundane issues, as we say, negligible for us tech enthusiasts, let's get straight to the point. Let's delve into the issue of driving, because this 1300 is the first GS that appears on the Superbike Italia YouTube channel, not the first one we drive in the editorial office, and it is worth making a somewhat general speech about its driving, which remains peculiar due to the front suspension primarily, among other factors. Or rather, the telelever, which is not the classic fork, but is an element with a front suspension, a front monoshock absorber, which has as its peculiarity that of keeping the motorcycle's attitude rather neutral. And this, if on one hand, it is another one of those tricks that give confidence, especially at the beginning, for how it manages the weight and partially cancels out the load transfers. On the other hand, it is also the one that actually, when you really push it, takes away a bit of feeling in the handling, that one for the real enthusiasts. However, the beauty of the GS, the reason why it has captured the hearts of tens, hundreds of thousands of motorcyclists all across the globe, is right there in the middle, in the joyful, not exaggerated round riding experience where it feels like flying just a few centimeters above the ground, akin to the enchanting sensation of riding on Aladdin's magical carpet. Disconnections go unnoticed under the wheels. In general, the handling remains neutral. There are never big jolts, big concerns, and therefore rhythm is accumulated between the curves, between the narrow, the medium, and the fast, almost without realizing it. And this is precisely the flip side of that lack of feeling when pushing hard, when looking for the right line, which objectively, perhaps on a Max Enduro, you shouldn't even look for the low center of gravity that I mentioned at the beginning then, with the boxer engine placed there below, is one of the secrets why the GS, besides being round, is also fantastic to ride in narrow spaces, in hairpin turns. Beyond its dimensions and weight, it is one of the bikes with which it is easier to tackle tight bends, stay glued to the line safely, when going at very low speeds. And if we want to go into a little more detail about the 1300 compared to the past, compared to the 1250, the front telelever that has been maintained in philosophy but extensively redesigned in technique, in my opinion, has improved this feeling at the front a bit. So much so that you have to be even more careful to push even harder, to pull the brakes harder, to be more aggressive with the inputs to perceive some lack compared to what we are used to as enthusiasts. I also really like the way, especially today in non-exceptional conditions, between fog, cold, wet roads, autumn leaves deposited abundantly on the road surface, I was saying the way the rear brake reacts, the rear brake control with the new integral braking that also involves the front and has excellent modulability, with a braking power that is not typical of the rear brake and a possibility to always correct trajectories safely. The reverse of the braking system did not drive me crazy, instead the front one, which has power but lacks the bite that I would like to have on an iron that, it is worth remembering, has 145 horsepower, but above all 149 Newton meters of torque. And with this, I would open the vast chapter that, in my opinion, is worth dedicating to the 1300cc Boxer engine, which remains the protagonist of the show, both for how it influences the driving dynamics as we saw a moment ago, and for how it opens up a world of relaxed, comfortable travel. If you want it, or a great wickedness that puts strain on your back, even on long journeys, as it had never done before, not even on the Mino 250, if you wake up with more combative instincts. By choosing this incredible machine, you will experience a thrilling ride like never before, filled with speed, adrenaline, and an intense desire for adventure. With respect to the 1250 below in the ground, that I would call GS below 2500, 2600 RPM, where the Boxer was perhaps the only engine in the world capable of giving chestnut thrust, verve and fluidity, even with very high gears there. Maybe the new version has lost a little something. You have to keep one gear less. You can't exaggerate with the sixth at 40 km/h. Better to be satisfied with giving it to the fifth and see if it can handle it. But from there upwards, from 2500 and 2700 RPM onwards, there is my 7 laps of success have brought even more satisfaction as I push the limits with an overflowing couple. The bike's ability to tear you out of the bends with a truly tasty progression is remarkable, and the power keeps increasing towards the high part of the rev counter. Here, the red zone is at 9000 RPM, which is quite high for a Boxer engine. Despite the prejudice that a big and apparently heavy Boxer should not be able to do motorcycle tricks, I want to remove this idea from your head and convey how impressive the bike is. If you want, I can show you firsthand the incredible capabilities of this machine. If you are that kind of tinkerers, in first gear and be careful not to give them too much, in second gear in certain situations or with a pinch of friction, and if you are particularly skilled, even in third gear, I tried, I didn't get great yields, but I found the clue that it can be done. The GS 1300 pulls up like a charm, and as I always say, it's an additional spectacle to put motorcyclists that seem harmless on one wheel and that should never ever put themselves in certain rude situations. It's important to prioritize safety and exercise caution at all times. In conclusion, from the saddle of the R1300 GS trophy version, let's talk about topics that are a bit more in line with BMW's top-of-the-range Maxi Enduro, namely equipment and travel capabilities, which are essential aspects to consider. I informed you that this is the trophy version, which I, and possibly others, will prefer due to the tricolor in typical BMW M style. However, there is also the standard white starting version, as well as the triple black version, which has been a characteristic of BMW for a few years, known for its aggressive color with dominant black, shades of gray, and spoked wheels. The trophy version is currently in front of me. It is the bike I was on before, specifically the option 719 Tramontana, named in a somewhat exotic manner, and distinguished by a series of accessories, golden spoked wheels, and a green livery, making it quite easy to recognize. But I would like to address the chapter of comfort and tourist facilities from here, because clearly they are the daily bread of the GS, and I say it without fear of being contradicted. They are still the characteristics that make and will make this bike desirable, even more so than in the past, because the saddle pedal handlebar triangulation is absolutely perfect for how it keeps you pampered and calm while driving, ready to face even thousands of kilometers of highway boredom. If fate should bring you to this, the equipment includes heated handlebars, heated saddle, adaptive cruise control with radar, blitz in the mirrors, and many other impressive and convenient features that enhance the overall riding experience. There is also the anti-collision assistant. In short, everything is studied to make you cover kilometers. But beyond the equipment, the technical specifications that are just cold words on paper, it is precisely riding the GS 1300 objectively as it was before. Also, the 1250 that makes you understand how this is probably the best place on two wheels in the world to face thousands of kilometers, endless journeys, and the secrets beyond the riding position and the equipment also concern, and it is not a mystery. The Boxer, the engine configuration that has always characterized the GS, plays a crucial role in delivering exceptional performance and reliability. In short, if it is true that even today, probably that mythical legend of the GS capable of beating on the roads from bends, the naked bikes for tinkerers, or even the sports bikes will have to remain a legend in the sense that it will not translate into reality, even with the 1300 GS. It is instead the 1300 GS that projects the legend in terms of absolute reference in the present, indeed in the future of BMW. I would like to make a final mention of two other small things that didn't drive me crazy beyond the brakes I mentioned at the beginning when talking about the chassis. One concerns a whim that I would have liked to have on a completely renovated motorcycle and positioned at the top of the BMW Motorrad range. The 6.5-inch TFT display, which is still an excellent element, is one of the best in circulation in terms of readability, size, and completeness of information. I would have preferred it to be refreshed, replaced by a display that is not necessarily larger, but slightly more visually appealing with a bit more of a wow effect. Another thing, the gearbox that works very well in terms of electronic assistance has improved in terms of smoothness compared to the previous 1250, but as always on BMWs in general, and on Boxers in particular, the command remains rather firm, quite contrasted. In short, you have to get used to it much better than in the past, practically perfect in terms of operation, but this may not drive crazy those who come from other motor configurations. Well, dear geeks, even for this video in a tourist version, or rather more specifically G-System, that's really all. As always, if I forgot something or if you would like to know more in detail, I invite you to use the comments below and ask. I will respond directly. For the rest, if you like the video, give us a like. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe to Superbike Italia YouTube channel and follow us monthly in the newsstand or in digital edition with the magazine and on our social channels. In practice, whatever app you open, you'll find me with this face, Igor, and the whole Superbike Italy crew. I can only say goodbye to you, go take a shower because I'm dressed for the Arctic Circle, but actually here near the sea it's 16-17 degrees, I'm sweating like an animal even today, so shower, dinner, then sleep, and maybe tomorrow again full speed ahead.